You know, when you think about the great engineering marvels of the world, the Panama Canal is right up there. It's this absolutely vital artery for global trade. But right now, it is facing a crisis like never before. And it's not because of a conflict or politics, it's because it's running out of something you'd think would be everywhere in a rainforest: water. So how on earth did one of the world's most important waterways get so thirsty?
Just let this number sink in for a second. 6%. This tiny little 50-mile strip of water is responsible for moving 6% of all global maritime trade. We're talking thousands of ships a year carrying pretty much everything you can imagine, from the phone in your hand to the fuel in your car, all funneling through this one single spot on the map. And that, right there, is the heart of the problem. This whole incredible system, this lifeline, it completely depends on a steady supply of fresh water. So, what happens when this brilliant machine starts to run dry? Well, that's the critical question we're going to dig into right now.
Okay, so first things first, let's just get a sense of the sheer scale here, because this isn't some little local problem. We are talking about a massive, global traffic jam with ripple effects that you can feel in ports and on store shelves all across the planet. So in a normal year, the canal is just this non-stop, perfectly oiled machine. It guides about 14,000 ships from one ocean to the other, smooth as anything. But right now, that machine is seriously grinding to a halt. Instead of a smooth passage, you've got ships just lining up, creating these huge queues at both ends, sometimes waiting for weeks just to get their turn.
So why? Why is this all happening? Well, to get that, you really have to understand what makes the Panama Canal so unique and, as it turns out, so uniquely vulnerable. Let's dive into its incredible thirst for rain.
The real genius behind the canal is how it works. See, it's not just a big ditch connecting two oceans. It's basically a giant water elevator. A ship sails into this huge chamber, a lock, and then millions of gallons of fresh water rush in from a lake, literally lifting the ship up. Then the ship moves into the next section, and all that water, it just gets released out into the sea. This whole process gets repeated, lock by lock, until the ship is lifted up and over the continental divide. It's amazing.
And where does all that fresh water come from? It comes from this right here, Lake Gatun. This huge man-made lake is the heart of the whole operation. It's the reservoir that feeds all those locks. Now get this, for every single ship that passes through, the system dumps about 50 million gallons of that fresh water into the ocean. But here's the problem. A historic drought means the lake's water levels have plummeted. No rain means no water for the lake, and no water for the lake means the water elevator just can't run at full steam.
And this comparison really drives home why Panama's problem is so specific. Let's look at the other great global canal, the Suez. The Suez is what you call a sea-level waterway. It's basically a saltwater hallway cut through the desert. No locks, no fresh water, no need for rain. It just works. The Panama Canal, on the other hand, because of that genius lock system, is totally dependent on rainfall to function. And we have to be clear here. This isn't just some dry spell. We are looking at one of the worst droughts in Panama in decades, and scientists are linking it to the powerful El Niño climate pattern. This whole thing has basically starved the canal of the one resource it absolutely cannot live without: fresh water. Okay, so we know why it's happening. Now let's talk about the so what. How does a local drought in Central America create this massive global ripple effect? Because trust me, a problem there is very quickly becoming a problem for, well, pretty much everywhere.
It's really amazing how fast this situation escalated. You know, back in 2016, the canal was celebrating this huge expansion to let even bigger ships through. Fast forward to 2023 and bam, the drought hits hard. The Canal Authority had to start making these drastic cuts to the number of ships allowed through each day just to save water. And soon after that, those long lines of ships started forming. By 2024, the big shipping companies were left with no choice but to start sending their vessels on much, much longer journeys.
So why is rerouting such a big deal? Well, because the canal is an incredible shortcut. We're talking about a route that shaves off about 8,000 miles from the journey ships would have to take all the way around the stormy, notoriously dangerous Cape Horn at the very bottom of South America. Taking that alternate route adds weeks to a voyage and a fortune in fuel, sometimes over $1 million extra for just one trip.
So who gets caught in the crossfire here? Well, pretty much everyone. Obviously, it hits the Canal Authority and the giant shipping companies like Maersk, but it also slams major trading nations like the US and China, who use this route all the time. It messes up supply chains for manufacturers, for retailers, for energy companies, and at the end of the day, it all trickles down to consumers. Yeah, that means you and me.
Look, the bottom line is this.
It's simple math, really. When it costs more money and takes more time to move stuff around the world, that extra cost doesn't just vanish. It gets passed on. A drought in Panama could very well mean you end up paying more for everything, from your new laptop to the clothes you buy at the mall.
All right, so this all leads us to the big question, maybe the most important one of all. What happens now? Let's take a look at how the world is trying to figure out how to navigate a much drier, much more uncertain future for this critical waterway.
So, people are scrambling for solutions, and a few big ideas are on the table. For one, Panama could invest a ton of money in new reservoirs to try and store more water. Or we might just see shipping companies permanently change their routes, deciding the canal is too unreliable. There's also a push for big infrastructure upgrades to make the locks more water efficient. But really, all of these are just bandages if you don't tackle the much bigger, long-term challenge of climate change in the region.
And that leaves us with this one huge lingering thought. This crisis at the Panama Canal, it's more than just a story about one drought. It's a massive, real-world stress test for our modern interconnected world. And it forces us all to ask a pretty tough question. As our climate keeps changing, are the global supply chains that we rely on for everything truly built to last?